T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, episode 56 this week, and we've got some good topics for you today. Now, of course, it's me and Astro Pub. We're going to talk some Star Citizen, but there's a new player on the block. A lot of people have heard about it now. We've talked about it in a previous episode, Starfield, and that's going to be the main topic today. We're going to talk about who Starfield is for, who Star Citizen is for, how they relate to each other. Will they kill each other? Astro Pub, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for having me on. It's always good to talk Starfield. I'm glad we can come back and talk on because it turns out, reading the comments from last time, a lot of people are like, wait, Starfield exists? What is this game? When we were talking about it earlier, a lot of people didn't know. Now everyone knows. And I feel like we were the prophets in the wilderness being like,
the early
this
birds.
Is coming, y'all.
We told
this
you.
This is coming.
In reality, though, game's been around for a while, right? And not released, obviously, but like people have been. They filed the trademark in like 2013, and I've definitely seen people discussing stuff since like 2017, 2018. So people have been waiting a long time for this game, and obviously it was revealed a few years ago in a teaser trailer, but it has come back in gameplay form and it's made a huge splash. Before we start diving into the deeper conversation of this, what was your initial reaction to that new gameplay reveal?
It's everything I wanted and more. That's just it. It was just everything. I was just like, I can't believe they're actually doing this. This is crazy. I'm down. It was more for me. It was like, this is exactly what I was expecting. And then they added a little extra. And I'm like, that's not too far off from what they could do. I didn't realize they're going to do it that way, but I like it. So.
Yeah. I think I was exactly the same as you. We were both kind of setting up the same expectations last time we talked about this. I believe that was episode 51 maybe, or 49, somewhere around there. And agreed. I mean, I was expecting a space RPG of some standard, which is all I really want. Like, and we'll get really deep into this and why this is such a different game from Star Citizen, because the stuff that makes me excited for Star Citizen is not the stuff that makes me excited for Starfield. So just like you said, when they revealed some of the stuff last week with the gameplay reveal, it ended up, I was like, I was not expecting that kind of stuff. So let's dive right into it then. Who is Starfield a game for?
Did you like Fallout? Did you like Skyrim? Did you like SWTOR or Dragon Age or Mass Effect? Then Starfield's for you. It's obvious, heavily inspired by a lot of those games. Classic RPG. They're even letting you take detriments to get you buffs. Like it's that kind of corresponding situation where you're getting more for role playing. And I wouldn't expect it. I mean, they've even said that like the main game storyline's like 35 hours ish. And obviously there's going to be side quests and a bunch of other stuff like that. So yeah, it's for people who want space RPGs, who want open world exploration games and want it in a single player package.
Yeah, this is that AAA packaged game. This isn't an experimental sort of out of left field kind of moonshot kind of game that Star Citizen takes itself to be. This is likely going to be playing it pretty safe, right? It's the first game in a new IP. It's a game from a very established studio that has a reputation, that has a type of game that people know it for. They probably won't stray too far. So I've always looked at this as like a safe bet for a way for people to dive into the genre and see space games more, because we don't get enough space games, I would definitely say that if somebody likes the games that you mentioned, Fallout, even things like Witcher, Skyrim, just like really polished RPGs. I say really polished. I know Bethesda games don't have that reputation.
Bethesda.
Yeah. But just that like high quality, a lot of money is put into it, a lot of voice acting and all that stuff. This really nails it for me. I've been waiting for something like this. I would
Yeah,
say
I mean,
since like Star Wars 1313 was like the last, besides
when that
Mass
was
Effect
announced.
Andromeda, which, you know, it
Well,
wasn't great.
that's actually something to bring up there. This is the Mass Effect Andromeda we didn't get.
Right.
Because Mass Effect Andromeda originally, for those of you who don't know, was supposed to be a open world exploration game with a bunch of different planets which were all procedurally generated. They would have some small planets which were designed specifically for the main storyline, but they were designed, you could put up outposts anywhere you wanted. And I think, if I remember correctly, Mass Effect Andromeda did have a small outpost system, but you had to like set up outposts in specific locations.
Yeah, it was very handholdy.
And there was only like 5 or 6 planets. And when the crunch time happened, they had to reduce the scope and size of Mass Effect Andromeda, and so they dropped a lot of those exploration features. Quite literally, what Bethesda's doing with Starfield is exactly what are they called? It's EA, but it's, I'm trying to remember the company.
BioWare?
BioWare wanted to do with Mass Effect Andromeda.
Right.
It's almost exactly the same.
I still remember that first trailer. To be quite honest, that's probably the first thing that really got me into the path of like hyping for Starfield. I didn't know what Starfield was going to be, and at the time I saw this trailer, my hype was for Mass Effect Andromeda. But as you said, this is that spiritual game that we're getting that we didn't get in Andromeda, and that first trailer feels like it was a trailer for Starfield. I don't know if you remember, it's the one where he stands up in the front of his ship and he's like swiping the screen and looking at the different planets. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, this is perfect. I can't wait for this. And then the game came out and they were like,
yeah,
get into this menu and tell your people to make an outpost and in this predefined place. Yeah, that was disappointing. I mean, it died for Anthem. Oh my gosh.
Yep. Of all things to die for. Anthem.
Wow, another game that had potential. They completely destroyed it. It was basically the Fallout 76 of BioWare, right? They tried to jump into multiplayer and they could not do it.
This feels like the redemption story for Bethesda as well. I'll say that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about like the history of Bethesda and like setting expectations for Starfield. But this definitely feels like the mea culpa. The like, okay, we screwed up in 76. Here, have this better designed.
Yeah, it feels like their third main IP. Like they got their post-apocalyptic, they got their fantasy. Now they're gonna get like a high sci-fi space sort of thing, and it feels like something that they are coming to the fans and being like, look, remember what we can do though, and please give us the chance because we want this to be a series. I think they want this to be a series for sure. That drives the Xbox and Game Pass, because there's a lot riding on this with Microsoft buying Bethesda.
Yeah, but I mean, Mass Effect is a great example because one of the big things that made Xbox 360 so popular was Mass Effect. Mass Effect was one of those IPs that lived on only on Xbox for such a long time.
Yeah.
And the fact that when it got bought out by EA, I think it eventually went multi-platform. But that was, and before that, BioWare made a big splash by releasing Star Wars: The Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, and that was an Xbox game. So like, there is some lineage there of space RPGs made by Microsoft. They like those sorts of things.
Yeah,
they want to use them as a catapult for their new system. So
that's a really good point. I always think of the Mass Effect parallel because it feels so similar to Starfield. It is a space RPG that is likely going to define that genre for the next generation, and Microsoft locked it down with the first one. So I'm always going to look at this first Starfield the same way we look at that first Mass Effect. They played with what they were good at. They put out a solid project with an interesting, intriguing universe and story, but they didn't go too crazy trying to do things differently. And then the second game came out. Then the second game came out, and that was when they experimented. And I'm hoping that it goes kind of the same way with this one. But
I agree. I think it's very, 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 very apt parallel.
Yeah, I hope that happens. And I didn't really think about the fact that Coder is something that also kind of lived under Microsoft. Same with what was it? Was it Freelancer or Wing Commander that was also bankrolled by Microsoft?
Freelancer.
Yeah.
Freelancer was bankrolled by Microsoft around the same time too. 2000, early 2000s, between 2000 and 2002, I think.
Yeah, and then
Halo was the same time. So someone, Bill Gates really likes sci-fi. That's
Yep.
all we got to say.
Yeah,
Like
that's why
sci-fi
he made
games.
Microsoft. He wasn't trying to make
Yes.
an operating system. He wanted space games at some point.
Space
Because it's
games.
also Outer Worlds, right? By Obsidian. They've got a lot of, I didn't even really think about that. So it's exciting to see that they're still really focusing on that, and I'm pumped to see what happens with Starfield. And we've got a call to prayer in the background. I hope the audience doesn't mind. We're in a new locale for today's show, so we'll have a couple different sound bites in the back there. Hi from Turkey, everyone. By the way, we just moved, me and my wife, and we're settling in over here for the next several months. But anyways, that's Starfield. Now, a lot of the people who are watching or listening to this podcast are regulars of both of our content. And full disclosure, we both make Star Citizen content. We're quite biased, in fact, towards Star Citizen, just because we want to see it succeed, whether that means getting mad at it for doing dumb things or being happy for the good things. But we also have quite a bit of experience and can tell you a bit more about like what Star Citizen has going for it and why somebody might like that over Starfield. So give me your 2 cents. What kind of game, or rather what kind of person is Star Citizen for when considering Starfield?
Multiplayer. You want to play with your friends. You want to be able to go out in a spaceship with your friends. Multi-crew experience, the experience of like Star Trek or Star Wars, the Millennium Falcon, running around a ship and trying to get those sorts of things. It's playing with people, other people. There's a little bit of a solo aspect, but it's not RPG. Starfield looks like it's going to be fun, but one of the major aspects of Starfield is that it is two separate games. You have the game on the ground and the game in space. Star Citizen is a game. You play in space, you play in atmosphere, you play in ground. There is no cutscenes, there is no different gameplay. That's all the same game. So you have that same experience throughout. Completely seamless, and all of the struggles and complications that creates.
All of them.
It's a lot. Yes, all of them. It's also much more sim-like. You're going to have to eat in Star Citizen. You're going to have to drink water, or you're going to have. And we already have to do that. You will log out in your bed to be able to log out in the game. You have to find a place to log out. You can't just like hit a save point and then respawn. It's a little bit more, as the kids say, hardcore than Starfield.
Pog.
But yes,
I don't think
poggers.
that was the right. That was not the right application.
Poggers, my dude. It's much more of a multiplayer and eventually massively multiplayer experience, where the experience is more about exploration in a more of a handcrafted sense, versus Starfield. And it's, like I said, multiplayer, simulation. I'm trying to think what else is there. There's a lot more in-depth content.
Yeah, definitely.
Everything is going to have more of a thing. For instance, I wouldn't be surprised if you could join all three factions in Starfield and have no consequences. I'd like there not to be. We'll talk about that eventually, but that's a typical Bethesda thing. You can join the Thieves Guild and the Assassins Guild and the Warriors Guild, and whereas in Star Citizen you wouldn't be able to do that. It's much more based around this kind of your actions matter, telling your story in a multiplayer universe. So
yeah, so the biggest difference, obviously, is that it's a multiplayer game versus a single player game. And everybody who's watching this podcast, just know we're not trying to draw a line of direct relation between the two games. They are different games. They're meant for different types of people, but there's a ton of overlap because they're both space games and people like space. Space people like space. I'm not Star Citizen Tomato, If there's a new game in space, I'm going to be into it. I think a lot of people who are playing Star Citizen are as well. And that dedicated story and character development of Starfield is kind of unmatched, or at least Bethesda in the past has been unmatched. We don't know much about Starfield, but Star Citizen is it's a very in-depth game. Like, In Starfield, you might run out of fuel on your ship, and that might prompt you to press a button and respawn or something, or press a button and have a little interaction pop up that gets you some more fuel at the cost of some money. In Star Citizen, you got to call someone, wait for them to come to you, dock with their ship, get them to start their fueling, negotiate a price. Yeah, check out the pressures.
They have to manage the pressure while everything's going.
Yeah.
You have to worry about being attacked while this is going on, all that sort of stuff.
So you're talking about two games that are focusing on two different things. One is focusing a lot on, like AstroPub said, that sim feel, in-depth multiplayer, definitely like a lot of, you want to do it with friends, whereas Starfield is more about a polished, there's quotes, a polished experience in space. And like you said, it's kind of two games in one. You know, you got your game on the ground and your game in space. That really just tells me straight up that they are so focused on this RPG element. They don't want to deal with transitions or in-depth ship interiors or a lot of stuff that's going to distract you from the core of a Bethesda game. And I like that. I think that's really, really good. They know what they're good at and they're trying to stick to it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean that's the important differentiation is, like, I made a point of posting about that there is no transitions between space and ground for Starfield, and for a lot of Star Citizen fans, that was their break. That was like, this is what I want, and that doesn't feel like I really want to get into that. But for me, that was like, that is a good point where Bethesda's saying, we don't care. This isn't a space sim. This isn't a life simulator. We're doing an RPG.
Yeah.
And that just wastes your time and our energy to have to, like, put a lot of effort into having you seamlessly go up into space and be able to fly in atmosphere, when we can just focus on telling the stories we want to tell and making a game that we think people will enjoy. And that's, I think that's the other thing to say. It's like, Starfield is much more casual. It's going to be for your casual fan, and Star Citizen, as I joked about hardcore, it's much more for your sim fan.
Absolutely.
Even though there'll never be enough sim for fans.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be that difference. It's the difference between Skyrim and Skyrim, the hardcore survival mod for Skyrim. You know, where like weight matters and everything else like that.
Skyrim VR with your hands tied behind your back. Very difficult. And the casual bit is a really good point. Starfield is the kind of game that I'm probably going to finish work and be like, man, I just want to jump into space and like do a mission in an hour, you know, just a casual sit back kind of thing. I will always choose Starfield for that. Star Citizen is more of a sit down on the weekend and like get together with some friends and spend a few hours in game. You've got different times to play different games, and I think a lot of people will probably jump in between them. So
yeah, I think so.
You touched a little bit on this before, and we actually talked about this in the last episode we did with Starfield. But for everybody who's just now getting caught up, let's talk a bit about the reputation of Bethesda and how it precedes them, especially when it comes to what people are expecting from this new game. Because I'm sure you have not had a shortage of, well, I don't trust them with this game. You've seen the train wrecks that they put out. And I'm like, well,
yeah, like clockwork.
The one,
the one, yeah. I mean, Bethesda does have a reputation, which is they release a game that's buggy and dang near unplayable, and then they let the players fix it later.
Right.
And that is a bad reputation to have.
Yeah.
I hope that they've learned from this mistake and are going to say, okay, we're going to make sure it's as polished of an experience as possible. It seems like that, at least, especially since they delayed the release. Does that mean it's going to be perfect? No game is perfect, especially a game the size of Starfield. But there is some legitimate concerns because, you know, Todd Howard has gone up on stage and just lied to people's faces.
Todd.
And he doesn't necessarily lie like Fallout 76 is going to be a single player game, y'all. He goes up on stage and implies things that mean single player or means this or means that, and it actually isn't that, and people go, wow, I hyped up for nothing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, sort of things like oh yeah, there's you know, and there's some design decisions that Bethesda has made in the past, which says you go, wow, this is dumb. This is bad. Like Fallout 76, not having any NPCs to interact with. Well, the players will be NPCs. Oh, this is going to be a PvP situation. Most of it is Fallout 76, but Fallout 4 and still smaller map than even, I think the smaller map than Skyrim might be a little bit bigger, but most of the usable parts of the Fallout 4 map of Boston are very small in comparison to previous games, much more emphasis on action game rather than role-playing game in the past. But like generally speaking, the way that Bethesda talks, they tell you up front what you're going to expect, and they usually don't lie about that.
Right.
You usually are able to tell exactly what they want from the gameplay announcement. And from what they've said from the gameplay announcement from Starfield, I would expect what they say. Because even though people say, oh, Paul or
Todd.
What is it? Todd, thank you. Todd Howard lies. He lies to your face. It's like because people experience with the hype engine before 76, and then they made the announcement of 76, and then they said it's multiplayer.
Yeah.
At the announcement, and that's when people got angry.
Yeah,
that's the reason why people forget that was the reason why.
And I think so. Bethesda obviously has this reputation, which it's just it must suck. I just hate. I would hate to, as soon as somebody mentions my company's name, it's just like, oh yeah, that buggy crap. But they've got this reputation, and I'm wondering, do you think it's been a little overblown because of Fallout 76?
Oh yeah, definitely. 76 has ruined that full thing. Now, to be fair, there's always been an undertone, an underhum of discontentment.
Yes.
Where people are like,
absolutely.
oh yeah, Fallout 3 is worse than New Vegas, and Fallout 4 is worse than New Vegas. New Vegas is better.
Obsidian games were better, yeah.
Obsidian games were better, and the original Fallouts were better. And mostly comparisons of Fallouts because they were working in somebody else's IP.
Right.
And every so often, someone will say like, oh yeah, Skyrim's worse than Morrowind because it's smaller, it's the map is smaller, the stories are worse, or the overall like main story sucks, the characters don't make any sense, those sorts of things. But there's always been that underhum of discontentment. But when 76 came out, a lot of people use that as a cudgel to be like, Bethesda sucks now.
Yeah.
So
it feels like it leaked. It went from being a thing in the Bethesda community of people who play those games to an industry-wide joke that people could make even if they've never paid attention to Bethesda games before. And there's definitely a lot of legitimate criticism and conversation to be had about the problems in Bethesda games, but golly gee, it is just frustrating that every time you want to open your mouth to talk about a Bethesda game, you now have to put in the caveat of, oh yeah, no, I know they have bugs, and I know they have problems, and I know modders will fix it, and all this, and Todd lies, and it's the worst, and they've ruined your house, and blah blah blah. But like, let's talk about the game. It's almost like talking about Star Citizen.
I was gonna say, it sounds familiar, doesn't it, Keenan?
It's like, can we just get to the actual point? It's very annoying, but I've also enjoyed that they've acknowledged that their recent games, 76 especially, but also Fallout 4, were kind of a departure from the things they used to do in the story building, the RPG aspects, the voiced protagonist, all that kind of stuff. And they've acknowledged that, hey, we want to go back to the things like Morrowind or Daggerfall or Oblivion and do the things that we know that we're good at. And it seems like from what they've shown us in the gameplay, this could all be, they're just, oh, this is what we want, maybe not what we're doing, which is kind of what happened with Cyberpunk. But it seems from the gameplay demos that that's the direction they're heading. Again, though, that same thing happened with Cyberpunk, so I won't give them a free pass yet, but I like the direction it's going.
It's important to keep up to date, which is why you should be watching the Launch Sequence podcast. Hit that subscribe button right now for more content.
Smash it.
Smash it. Because Keenan and I will probably be talking about this regularly, between our channels, just to keep update on it. But yeah, I agree. It feels very. I think the problem is that industry wide, being a cynical jerk has become the status quo. Partially because games like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk and Fallout 76, they're all like, oh yeah, this game, and to a degree, even Star Citizen, where like they'll say something and then something will go wrong, or like the whole redemption arc has become too common of a concept in gaming, rather than just releasing a good game.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm sure people really like games like the Dark Souls games and the most recent one, Elden Ring. People loved it because it wasn't just a buggy mess.
Came out and it worked.
So they could play it.
Yeah. It just works.
It just works.
Yeah.
But so as a result, you know, I get it a little bit. There is some legitimate hesitancy for Starfield because of 76 and other games like that.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm more willing to be forgiving on this fact because they usually don't just lie to your face in a gameplay reveal. Some things might get cut here and there, but they also have never delayed a game when they announce it. They have not ever. Bethesda's never delayed a game after they made a date announcement in the last, well, they may have been way back in the day, but since Skyrim or Fallout or since Oblivion, they've never made that.
Wow.
They've never delayed it.
Yeah, that's actually, like, that's pretty big.
Yeah, so the fact that they delayed it is big. It means that they're actually, you know, going through to try to fix major issues or to add content that they don't have. So
they definitely had to fix something. Thanks, Obama. But anyways, it's certainly there's been a clear problem, I would say, over the last, I don't know if it's 10 years, definitely in the last 5 years, probably in the last 10 years, of game studios just biting off more than they can chew. And I think part of that is, like, we expect games to be bigger, right? Like, we expect this exponential curves of games improving, and we hit kind of this interesting plateau around 2010 where they figured out what they needed to do to make good games, and then all the companies were like, okay, we'll just keep doing this in different ways. And they don't want to switch from that. We want them to make bigger games. We also don't want them to take too long. And if they do take too long, we'll call it a scam. And it's just kind of, the whole industry's gotten to this point where more is being asked for than can be made. And these companies will come out, like you said, on stage, and they'll kind of hint at things and imply things because they know that's what we want, but they don't know if they can even supply it. And that's gotten just so frustrating. And I don't know where it needs to, I mean, obviously it needs to change with the game companies, but I don't know if it also needs to change with the discourse in this industry of calling out games for taking too long, because it gets a bit unhealthy at times.
Yeah, it's, the problem is that people, like, talk about taking too long. Like, no one shits on Starfield for saying that it's a game 25 years in the making.
I don't know. I saw a couple people taking that way too literally.
But the reality is I think that there's a lot of discussion in gaming that is, we want more from our games, but we're not willing to wait the time or the effort
or pay the money,
because we pay the money. So, like, there are games which, because game companies know that a game that's ambitious may not make their money back, it's much safer to make a Elden Ring or a Breath of the Wild or a Call of Duty clone, or, you know, that sort of thing. It's much safer and easier to make those because they make themselves, they make their money back quickly plus extra money. And if they fail, you don't spend a lot of money because it's tried and true technologies. It's tried, like, you're using, you know, Unreal, so you don't have to pay a ton of money for those sorts of things. And as a result, you're ending up with worse quality games that, or like very average games that don't take risks because risks cost money. It's not a situation just with gaming. It's a situation with movies and television shows, and which is the reason why a lot of people are looking to independent games, because they don't have that, we need to make, you know, $4 billion on this game title or it's terrible. And a lot of that has to do, I think, partially with the consumer, because we take a dump on games that take a long time. Like Cyberpunk took what, 9 years to release, and it was still bad. Like, it could have easily used a year or two more development to fully flesh out its gameplay, and it probably would have been a much better game if that was the case. No Man's Sky obviously needed 3-4 more years than it was given. But because long games equals bad. Any game that's in development for a long time, oh, it's Duke Nukem Forever. It's that kind of thing, because it hits on that dopamine hit, that meme with monkey neuron activation. A long game bad. Like that sort of thing. It can hurt games and games of development, especially ambitious games.
Yeah.
So I think the discourse really needs to move away from games good or bad, and more of, what do we want from our games? Do we want the same thing, or do we want something new?
Yeah.
And as a gaming community in general, do we want something that's ambitious that may not be as good, or do we want cookie cutter, another battle royale game?
Right. And there's definitely space for both. Like, both have a reason. I definitely still want to be able to play some throwaway Assassin's Creed title just for, the fun, the good graphics, the interesting historical aspects and all that stuff. But
Far Cry 79,
God. Far Cry's like, those are the two games that made it. Those are the two games that made this new format of games. Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. It was the Ubisoft format, with the whole find an area, do a search, get all the points of interest, go do those points of interest, get some, like, over and over and over again. That's annoying. But we need both. We need those experimental games, and we need those, like, kind of not waste of time, but easy to get through games. And obviously it's not like all of the issue is with us. I think the companies themselves also need to be better about their development, their scheduling, what they tell us and how they tell us, especially companies like CIG. But that goes back to what you said. We need to stop saying game development good or bad, and start to actually consider, is this game development healthy? Is what they're doing good? Is this delay a good thing for the game? Halo Infinite was in development for, I think, 4 or 5 years, but for like 3 years prior to that, and during the development of the game, they were building the engine, the Slipspace engine. They built their own game engine for this game, and it took a total of like 7-8 years maybe to make it, and then they launched too early, and it's disappointing. And it's like, the first delay was a good thing. Everybody was saying, hey, you can't delay this game again. But in all honesty, we should have been in a position where we could have said, you know what, maybe it is best that they delay this game. Like, the consumers need to make that opinion known. This isn't going to hold up. If you release this, we're going to drop it in 6 months. But we're still not at that point. We can't have those conversations in this industry yet. It's annoying.
Yeah. I was going to say, the other conversation that needs to be had, which isn't being had, is just another discussion about Bethesda, because Bethesda famously burned out and did absolutely horrendous crunch with 76.
Right. Yeah.
They absolutely crunched their thing. And if someone's like, I'm not going to play a Bethesda game because they crunch their employees, I'm like, that's on a moral standpoint, I understand that.
Yeah.
That's 100% understandable. But we also got to recognize that if we want things like good games, we need to have healthy developers. And to have healthy developers, we need to have minimal to no crunch. And to have minimal to no crunches means you're going to have longer development times, because these things take longer.
And that means money.
Yeah. So, like, there's definitely developer issues on multiple levels, but there's also consumer feedback issues where consumers will feedback that information, where games need to crunch because they need to get it out in 3 years. Otherwise, it's a waste of money, and then no one will buy it, because, it's an old graphics engine or whatever.
Yeah.
And that all feeds back into the Starfield discussion as well, just because of all of these different things do impact the idea that Starfield is out of time. Like, I've seen a lot of people say, the graphics look horrible. And I think they're insane, but the conversation about having like the next generation game has to be 100% like photorealistic graphics, or I don't want to buy it. Where it's like, but it's a game. It's not a movie. Do we want to play it or not? That conversation.
I remember when I used to think that the graphics were the way I would judge new games. And then I started to follow the development of Star Citizen, and I was like, wait, there are so many more things that like these studios could do with these games when they have the money for it. AI stuff, freaking economy stuff, just the detail in game features. Graphics are great. I love graphics. That's why I go to most games. But like, you need to do more than that if you're going to develop a game for the future. And I think Starfield is doing more. Like, we haven't seen a game like Starfield. We haven't seen a AAA space game with the scale that Starfield has, because nobody's really been able to do it or believed that it could work yet. And I don't need good graphics to try that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's Todd Howard's baby. He's been wanting to make this since the late '90s, and it's obvious. And that's the thing. It's like I've been saying that it feels like every other Bethesda game has been adding features that was needed for Starfield. You know, because like base building, Fallout 4. Before that, you had the Hearthstone or the Hearthfire upgrade for Skyrim.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, base building. And now you've got this brand new advanced base building system, which only makes sense for a game like Starfield, because base building is a
very
big
important
part of space games,
yeah.
You know? So, you know, gunplay getting better and better and better in the Fallout series. Why? Well, Starfield is a space game and you have gunplay in that. You know, larger emphasis on procedural generation. Why do you need a lot of procedural generation? There's 1,000 planets you need to procedurally generate. So
ooh, that's something to talk about in a little bit. 1,000 planets. But first, here's a fun topic. So
okay.
What I've always said is that if somebody can do Star Citizen better than CIG, I'm not going to stick around with Star Citizen. People are always like, oh, this game sucks. People shouldn't be playing this. I'm like, if somebody else can do it better, I will jump ship. Now, Starfield can't do what Star Citizen's trying to do because they're not aiming for it. But this question's gone around a bunch, and, you know, I'm not going to say I agree with it or not. Yeah. Do you think that Starfield is going to be bad for Star Citizen?
I'm going to take the avant-garde answer and say it's actually going to be good for Star Citizen. Nothing can kill a game other than the game itself. Halo didn't die because Call of Duty was better. Halo died because they stopped innovating, because they stopped caring. And then you have, you know, why did Fortnite beat Call of Duty? Because Fortnite had a new unique ideas, not because Call of Duty wasn't doing enough battle royale. It's just the genres you're in can change, or like the top dog can change, but the games themselves are the only ones that can kill themselves. So I actually think it's going to be a good thing, because anybody who plays Starfield and enjoys themselves but goes, well, what if I was playing with my friends? Then like, what's the other game that can do that? Star Citizen's the only other game that can do that, with like massive scale planets and gunplay and spaceship combat. It's like, oh, okay. You know, all of the stuff you're going to see in Starfield is going to be kind of like a miniature version of what you can do in Star Citizen, with, you know, even more. And because Star Citizen has that little bit of it's sim, but not too sim. It has more of a, hopefully when they fix the new player experience, it's a little bit better for newer for people to come in and kind of get a handle of that sort of experience. So, because I can only speak from my experience, but my experience is that people will play Bethesda games forever, but those people are Bethesda fans.
Right. And
even then, my wife, hardcore Bethesda player, she used to mod Morrowind when she was a kid. Like, that's how hardcore she is with she knows the lore backwards and forwards.
Getting into it, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, like, this is her game. she's really excited for Starfield. And but my wife will play Starfield for probably like 4 weeks straight hardcore, and then after that she'll go back to playing Stardew Valley, or you know, Binding of Isaac, or something like that, like another game, because we only want so much of one thing at a time. Sometimes we want a little bit of a palate cleanser. So Star Citizen could easily be that palate cleanser for people who are playing Starfield and are like, hey, I've played 700 hours of Starfield. What else is out there? And then Star Citizen.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with you. I thought that, so Starfield, this is another parallel to Cyberpunk that I like to draw. I thought that Cyberpunk was a great beacon for the genre of the same namesake of Cyberpunk games in general. There weren't really that many big Cyberpunk games before that that game came out. I had played a few. Observer was one. Deus Ex was a huge series that I love, and I really, really hope they come back now that a new studio has bought up a new publisher has bought up the studio. But I thought that Cyberpunk was going to be a great opportunity for people to get into this AAA game, try out this genre, see different things, hacking, biomods, the RPG aspects, the big cities, the lights, all that stuff, and be like, wow, there must be other games of this genre that go deeper into this stuff. Didn't happen as much as it could have, but it did kind of help. We saw some Cyberpunk interest flourish from that. Starfield, though, feels like another chance at that for space games, because we haven't really had big space games like that in a while. And like, I could name, Hard Space Shipbreaker, Empyrean, X4, that the Outlaw game, I can't remember what it's called. Rebel Outlaw?
Galaxy.
Rebel Galaxy, yeah.
Rebel Galaxy Outlaw.
Yeah. FTL, Astroneer. There are a ton of niche space games. Space Engineers, obviously, is another one that have aspects that will probably be in Starfield. And you try it out, just like you said. You dock with a ship in Starfield, and you're like, this is cool, but what if I could like dock with a ship that didn't want me to dock, right? What if I could like jump from one ship into the other and take it over? I need to find a game like that. Just like you said, Star Citizen pops up, and that's going to happen again and again and again, because it's not just like the Starfield releases and people suddenly are like, oh, space games exist. Like, that game's going to be bought and played for years on end, and every time somebody does, as soon as they're at that moment, like you said, where they need a palate cleanser or they want to try something more, boom, there you go. You got a whole genre of healthy games ready. And like, space in general is just super exciting again. We're going into space more. We're doing cool things. You just sent like a telescope up there. We've got TV shows and movies coming out. I honestly can't see how Starfield could be bad for Star Citizen.
If it does well, it'll encourage other developers to go into it. We know Ubisoft has been toying with the idea of doing a space game for years. They've been kind of poking at it. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is a good example of that. But
yeah.
Please.
That's another one of those games.
Yeah, I'm willing to wait if it's good and that kind of stuff. But it's like there's beyond that, like maybe going Assassin's Creed in space or doing a pirate game in space. Those sorts of things. Doing more space games from other developers. EA has been sitting on Wing Commander as an IP for years.
Wow.
And done nothing with it. And with the success of things like Star Wars Squadrons, I thought maybe we'll see a little bit of this. So maybe Freelancer will return. Who knows? Microsoft might dust off that IP and pull that out of storage. There are tons and tons of space opportunities and new developers to create space in the AAA space as well.
Yeah.
And so if Starfield does well, it'll not just be good for Star Citizen, it'll be good for all space games.
Yeah, it really will. And not only are there a ton of AAA studios that can do it, as we're seeing with games like Star Citizen, or even the smaller ones, like I said, Astroneer or No Man's Sky for all. I mean, like No Man's Sky came from a team of like 12 people. The tools that are now available to people were not available 20 years ago. That's why we didn't see those types of games. But now, Starfield is a success. You see other studios start jumping into this. This could seriously be the beginning of a huge resurgence for the genre. I mean, people would probably say it started a little while ago with things like No Man's Sky and Elite Dangerous, but now we could see it kick into high gear, and I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, those games were not AAA though. Those games were like AA at best or indie,
right?
As we described them.
Yeah,
Starfield is the first, other than Call of Duty Modern or Infinite Warfare, and I guess a little bit of Cyberpunk. And like Mass Effect Andromeda, we really haven't seen attempts at it. We've seen stabs at them, but the stabs have been utter failures.
Right.
Which is weird, because like Infinite Warfare was a fun game. I enjoyed it, but no one played it because it wasn't boots on the ground realistic, because people had COD fatigue at that point. So
I need to watch a playthrough of that game. I heard it's actually a pretty good story.
It's good. It's a good story. And it's they even reference like Wing Commander is a huge influence for them, for like, because there's a space fighter segments that you go on to. It feels like Wing Commander modern. Which is funny because that's what Squadron is. So
that's
we'll we'll see that interesting comparison in when Squadron comes out with like, oh, this is like Infinite Warfare, but good.
Well, that's an interesting
but
comparison.
allowed to do well. So
right, that is a very interesting comparison. One I haven't heard before, and a little plug. Honestly, if you're looking for Wing Commander stuff, certified by AstroPub, this might be something to check out.
Go check. It's for FPS and space. There's not enough space stuff, but there's definitely a lot of space stuff in it, and it's cheap. I think you can get them for pretty cheap on Steam now. It's available for every console. So if you like Wing Commander stuff, check out Infinite Warfare.
Which is just weird. It's so weird here. You like Call of Duty, go, or you like Ring Commander, go check out some Call of Duty. Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. Okay, so the next question I've got for you, and this is a fun one, because it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about leaving Star Citizen if another game does it better. If you do end up enjoying Starfield, like let's say you and your wife just fall head over heels for Starfield and you fell in love, would you make that your main game as opposed to Star Citizen, or will Star Citizen always kind of have that spot because of everything it has going for it?
It depends on a lot of things. I mean, I did not get into content creation because Star Citizen. I got into content creation long before Star Citizen.
Okay.
Star Citizen was just the game that I enjoy the most. So would I switch over to Starfield completely? Maybe, probably not though. I mean, Star Citizen is still the game I want to play. It's still the game I want to play in 5 years, 10 years before I die, whatever. Yeah, no, I'll definitely do more content for Starfield if people want me to watch it, or are watching and want me to do content for it, for sure. So, but no, I'm not. It's not. I don't. For me, looking at it right now, I don't think that's going to happen. And even if it did, I'd still do Star Citizen content because I like it. So, ¿por qué no los dos? It's not like you can't play two games.
Exactly. Yeah. That is the way to go. Always. I was almost going to name this podcast that. ¿Por qué los God, I can't even say it. I was almost going to name the podcast that though, because like, it's just, you don't have to pick one or the other. I will say, I don't think I'd be able to do a Bethesda game as my main game, because quite honestly, it's, at least not now, it's just a different
audience.
Yeah, different audience, a different ball game. Making content for an audience that large is kind of intimidating, to be honest, because YouTube is not super friendly. And when you're making content, a lot of times, sometimes you miss something, sometimes you get something wrong. And when you're making content for Star Citizen, that's one thing. You get a few thousand views here, you get something wrong, most of the community knows who you are, yada yada, whatever. Making a Bethesda video is a little bit different, and I don't think I'd be able to do that every week. That's just a lot to keep up with. It's moving very fast. There's a ton of stuff going on. I really want to cover Starfield, but making it the main game, I just don't think will be enough content.
No, I think it'll be a nice departure from Star Citizen, like a lot of games we've played in the past. Like, I'm also interested in Warhammer 40k Darktide is coming out in September, which is a co-op shooter set in the 40k universe. I love Warhammer 40,000. Will I play it? Yes. Will I do content for it? Probably. Will it be the content that I'll do forever? No, it comes out on September 13th. It's like a week before, or like a month before CitizenCon. Of course, I'm not going to do it for forever. I'll do it for a couple of weeks and then back to Star Citizen, because that's just when like this exciting time for Star Citizen. So.
Yeah. I don't think, honestly, I don't think most people would, especially not at this point, be able to say if they would switch or not. But it's a fun hypothetical. I think there will definitely be people who drop the game, drop Star Citizen to play Starfield more. That might be something I do for a few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely play it a little bit. I'll cover the lore for it. I'll try to do my best to not step on the toes of the other lore folks for Bethesda, but they may not be interested. So to cover like the different factions and the individuals and all that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. That'll be fun to see. I'm excited to see those videos you put out. You put one out that I haven't gotten to watch, but was pretty intriguing. I think it was the explaining the group constellation.
The Constellation Group.
Yeah, so that sounds interesting because like we don't really know much about them, but I'm excited for lore videos, especially with a new IP. I'm sure they're going to put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, it's very cool, and especially with the scope of the game, it's going to have a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Right. So, looking at the expected release of Starfield, now I think you actually mentioned that you could see it getting delayed into the fall or at least later into 2023. The current schedule release, though, I think they were saying Q1 of 2023.
Q1. The first half of 2023.
Okay, yeah, first half. So that's kind of the same window that I have for Star Citizen's 4.0 update. It could be coming later. There's a good chance it comes later. This is CIG. But like that's a lot of stuff going on. Where do you think Star Citizen will be as a whole when that release happens, and what do you think the conversation will be between them?
I think worst case scenario, they'll release within a week of each other. 4.0. So,
oh God, I wouldn't even know how to cover that.
I wouldn't sleep. But it's important to remember that Star Citizen is still going to be an alpha game, even when 4.0 releases. I think Star Citizen will be a better performing game by 4.0. I mean, it'll be a better performing game by 3.18. But 4.0 will increase that performance. You'll see it shoot through the roof, where people are going to be able to play the game on potato PCs for, at 120 FPS.
Oh man, I hope this is Lord Stradamus speaking. I need that to happen.
Maybe. Well, everything seems to be falling into place for Gen 12 to come out in 3.18, and then Vulkan to come out sometime in 4.0. And I've seen what Vulkan does to other games. It's magic with what it can do.
I've heard about the how it turned around Doom, I think Doom 2017 or something. Yeah,
it made it super easy to play. And so I think you'll see that going on, where Star Citizen will be more polished but more buggy. So it'll be easier to play, but you'll experience more game-breaking bugs. And I think Starfield, when it releases, is going to have major game-breaking bugs because they'll always slip through, no matter what, first release, and they'll do some sort of hot fix within a week of it, and then it'll be able to be played better. It's Bethesda. It's a huge game. They're going to have bugs that will show up. You can only hope that it won't be breaking your game, but there'll be some like quest ending games, like things where like a quest will not complete, and you'll have to wait until an update or recreate your entire game to try to play it again. I guarantee that's going to happen. That's the realist in me is like, it's a Bethesda game.
Yeah.
There are going to be some issues.
It is known.
So yes, it is. So I think Star Citizen will be in a much better place than it is now. 3.17.2 is around the corner. 3.18 is still going to be coming out. And then when 4.0 comes out around that time, it'll be in a very good position for going forward. And I think Starfield will release a solid release with some major issues, which will affect probably console players more than PC players, because that seems to be the issue. And then what'll happen is in a week or two, it'll pull out and do better. And overall, I think Starfield will do what Bethesda games do. It'll shoot up for about 2 months, and then at about the second month, it'll just go for in terms of playtime. Mm-hmm. And you'll have that small, hardcore Bethesda fan base, which will play the hell out of that game. And new people will come on and be like, this is amazing. I never knew it before. But when they start dropping off that crest, you'll see Star Citizen, which is, it don't stop. Like that SpongeBob meme, he don't miss. Like I don't know how they do not stop. Like even now, like the Star Citizen subreddit was number 2 highest growing subreddit for gaming on Reddit.
Yeah, that's weird.
Period.
That is strange.
It's still number 5 after Starfield. Like you see all of these new people coming in to play the game. Like the popularity of Star Citizen is going nothing but up, and I don't know how that. I don't see that line stopping. I don't see that hype train slowing in the next year.
Somebody in the YouTube comments told me that you're wrong. They said this game was dead. I don't believe this crap you're shoveling to me. Game growing. What is that nonsense? It's just crashes and bugs.
It's all it is. Oh, cope and seethe.
I jest, but like it's a freaking frustrating game to play sometimes. And
oh yeah,
at the time that 4.0 comes out and Starfield comes out, I imagine space games will just be known as being broken for like
For
the two that are getting all the attention are just like game breaking bugs left and right. What I really hope though is, and this is definitely a it's been a sentiment that's been creeping into the community, and it's well deserved of CIG, but a lot of people are just like, at this point, I am only going to care if it's actually in the game. I don't want to hear about what CIG plans anymore. I want to see what they're actually putting into the game. And I do hope that at the point that Starfield's coming out, Star Citizen has something a little bit better to be like, hey, we haven't been sitting on our hands, because we know, right? You and me know, and the people who are probably listening to this podcast and are watching the YouTube videos, we all know that they're doing work in the background. It might not be headline making. It might seem like the game's sitting still, but they've been doing work. And I really do hope that they are at a point there where they can finally be like, look, we did something.
Yeah.
They need that.
I think summers are always rough for Star Citizen though. In general, they're rough for gaming. Like you just have this drought because everyone, especially it's 2022, and we've been in lockdown for 2 years, and finally some of those lockdowns are being kind of fully released, and we're seeing events starting to happen again. People are going to step out of their house and touch some grass because it's the summer. So as a result, they always drop
outside
dramatically. IRL is a weird game, I know.
Gross.
So you're going to see that eventually.
Yeah.
But which is why I was surprised to see Star Citizen just absolutely slamming up the charts for like in the beginning of the summer. Like, what's going on?
That's very surprising.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I agree with that. Is that we're generally going to see more of a put up or shut up. You know, yeah, it's great. You're saying this is going to come out in the future. You're talking about, the new kiosks. I don't care about it until I see it.
Yeah.
So that kind of mentality. I understand that.
And that's not, because this is also another thing that gets thrown around. Like, I don't think that Starfield's gonna make CIG nervous. People are saying like, oh yeah, Starfield's gonna put a fire under CIG. I mean, CIG's going to pay attention to the game. It's a space game. It's a big space game. And it's going to, the feedback that Starfield gets is probably going to be pretty actionable by CIG, at least to consider what they're doing. But I don't think that this is going to be like Starfield comes out and suddenly CIG realizes they have to start doing more work or something. It's all natural. It's all on schedule. I think they've always planned for server meshing to come out and then hopefully have an increase of stuff. If that does happen, God, I dread the people who are like, this is because of Starfield. This is why they're doing more work now. They changed everything in the last 3 months.
Well, you and I both know that that's not true, but that doesn't mean that the average person doesn't understand that,
right?
Because you and I do this ancient concept for gamers, which is read, and we read things like the monthly reports. And
I don't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what reading is, man. I just watch videos.
I just watch videos.
I
get my opinions from YouTubers. But yeah, so like, yeah, I get that. It's just one of those things that we know is coming down the pipeline. I think most people know it's coming down the pipeline. But and you know what? I don't care if someone's like, this is happening because of Starfield. It's like, do you enjoy it? Who gives a shit? Like,
that's fair.
It's fun.
Yeah. That is fair. So by the time it comes out, if it comes out at the planned time, which would be next spring or so, we would have passed 10 years of development for Star Citizen, which is a milestone. Absolutely. And a lot of people have different things to say about that. It's not 10 years. It's actually 12. It's not 10 years. It's 5. They started over. I'm going to say 10 because that's when it was announced, right? So it was announced in 2012. Cyberpunk was announced in 2012 and launched in 2020. Or was it 2021?
Yeah, 2020.
2020, yeah. Starfield wasn't announced, but the trademark was registered in 2013. And I believe work started, according to Todd Howard in an interview back in 2019. He seemed to be saying around 2015 or so. So by the time it comes out, Starfield will also be 8 years in development, like Cyberpunk was, with Star Citizen being in 10. 10 years is considered a lot of time. 8 years is also a lot of time, but do you think that what do you think of that comparison? Starfield is definitely not, I would say, as ambitious a game as Star Citizen. Do you think if they took an extra year or two with it, it would start to get more criticism like that? Or no,
Yes.
because they didn't announce it early enough?
Cyberpunk was delayed like twice when it was announced, and people started giving it criticism. The thing is that gamers do a lot of criticism of games that are in development, but if they release and they're good, they don't care. Like you remember back, like, oh, remember when that game was like delayed 4 times and they released it and it was very good. Most people are like, I don't remember that it was delayed. I just enjoyed playing it. I think the reality is that gamers do not, and just people in general do not care about time. They care about content. Is it fun or not? There'll still be people who will meme and say, oh, Star Citizen's development for 10 years. You know, if 4.0 releases next spring, over 10 years in development, people will say, oh, well, it's been over 10 years in development. It's like, yeah, but now they have 100 players per server. And there are, 7 servers or 3 servers per system that they're doing. So, and they're just going to grow from there. Plus, they've got bounty hunting, and if everything works out the way Chris Roberts says, and it's complicated. That's complicated.
So what Bob says?
Yeah, what Bob says. What Christopher Robbins says. If that all works out, people won't care because more people, another system, more content. Who cares? Is the answer. I think Star Citizen is reaching the point where, and like Squadron 42, for instance, is reaching the point where they're in a stage where they need to show progress, significant progress. And I think 3.18 is going to show that significant progress. And then 4.0 will additionally show that significant progress. And that's really the key. We've seen, you and I, and I'm sure most people who've watched this video have seen games which release to a lot of hype, and then the developers just go whoop, and it just gets abandoned. And then maybe 4 years later, they'll pick it back up and try to develop it. I remember so many. I think it was called the Stomping Lands, which is a survival game, like set with dinosaurs, and it was just abandoned, like right off the bat.
Never even heard of
all
it.
their money and they left. Yeah. There's a bunch of games that do that, where like they'll come in, they'll make a huge splash, and then the developer realizes they bit off way more than they can chew, and they have like, oh, I have all these ideas that I'm going to do, and then they just never do it. They just walk away. The fact that CIG is in constant communication with the backers, weekly communication, that plus the every patch growing, adding more stuff, fixing previous issues, maybe not to the degree that people want, but still progressing, shows a lot of commitment that CIG has to the game. And as long as that commitment is there, people will come back. I think the same thing with Starfield. As long as Bethesda continues to show that they want to support the game, adds bug fixes and patches, and helps support modding and all of those things, as long as they continue to progress with that they care about Starfield, people will like they care about Fallout 4 and 76 and Skyrim, how they support all those games still today, then people will mind. And I think that's actions speak louder than words in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So the time doesn't matter as much as the action.
They got a hype train to keep up now. Bethesda does. Yeah. I hope that they keep regular communication about the game's development because, we got an interview from Todd Howard last week, which clarified for us how landing will work. I do hope that we keep getting little tidbits of that throughout the next several months before release, because that kind of, and not only does that help with the hype, it also helps, like you said, keep us informed that they want us to know what's going on with the game. They want to make sure that the people who are interested in the game are hearing about it and they're getting the information they need. One final thing to really finish off on, I guess, which is sort of what we were just talking about with Star Citizen and making a splash with content and proving that they're doing work. With 4.0 coming out next week, but also 3.18 looking pretty good this year, or sorry, next year.
Next year.
And
not next week.
I wish.
Confirmed.
Confirmed by Space
4.0 next week.
Oh, very nice. With with it coming out next year, though, and 3.18 obviously having a decent amount of content, and 3.17 too, even having some surprising additions with stuff that they've only just recently started working on. When do you feel, or do you feel like we're already at a point where they're starting to improve and increase content? Because they cut down the roadmap, right? We can't see that much that's coming in the next year. The patches are still not that big. 3.17 felt like a preparatory patch. 3.18 feels more like something significant. Where do you feel like they are in terms of their ramping up? Do you believe in the fact that they are going to ramp up, that we're going to see stuff start coming out more quickly and more significant stuff at that?
Yeah, I think so. CIG, there are three major issues that CIG has to tackle. Persistent entity streaming, or four, I should say, four major issues. Persistent entity streaming, Gen 12, server meshing, and Quanta. They've already started adding Quanta to the game. So they've already started that process. Gen 12 has already been worked on. We've already started to see some of the major applications. PES should be introduced by 3.18. We've already seen some back-end work for that, and server meshing is shortly after that. We've started to see that completion, and those things are the things that are keeping the other gameplay aspects from adding, because there's no point in adding, say, salvage until you can know that the game can support it. One great example of this is what's in 3.17.2, which is, for the longest time, back in 2019, I want to say, they showed off NPCs exiting a Valkyrie. Right? And
in that trailer? Or no. You mean in the CitizenCon demo? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So AI's sitting in a seat in a chair and then getting out of the Valkyrie and walking off down the ramp onto a location. And they said that they wanted to add that recently. And like last year, they had some plans for adding that for like transportation missions, but that got canned. So it's obvious that that's been either done or close to being done for a bit. But they needed nav mesh to work so that when those AI got off the ship, they could wander around and not have to like be in only one place. So now that nav mesh is coming in, boom, instantly with 3.17.2 Evocati, they've showed off that, or they've been talking about how they want to do reinforcements for specific derelict outpost sites for as part of missions. Like bam, right off the bat. And that shows you like they have things in the pipe that they've been working on. Maybe not huge things. It's not like they're sitting on bounty hunting V2. It's just they have aspects, little additions to the game that they've been sitting on to wait for other technology to get released so that they can just drop that in and see how it works. That doesn't mean it'll work right away, nor does it mean that they're going to like 4.0 releases and suddenly this huge tsunami of content comes out. It just means that stuff is holding significant progress from happening.
Right.
So, that's just it.
The whole idea that the tools, the back end, I saw somebody say kind of like the foundational parts of the game. People keep saying that they're finally coming together, and I don't know why, but for some reason I've always considered that even when server meshing is done, we would still have more of sort of a foundation to do. But do you feel like this is kind of tightening up or tying up the last loose ends of that basic foundation of the game engine running Star Citizen?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, dynamic meshing definitely needs to happen. But dynamic meshing, the difference between static meshing and dynamic meshing is how those servers are created and how many servers there are. Yeah. That's it. It's the fundamental aspect of players involved in a mesh of different servers and having to go between those servers and having that seamless transition. All of that is the gameplay issue, not how do these servers form, because they already know, like, if by 4.0 they have nailed the transitions properly, then 4.1 or 4.2 or 4.7, whenever static or dynamic meshing comes in, all the differences for player's perspective is just, or from the gameplay perspective, is just where those boundaries are. Not the transitions, not the handoff, but where those boundaries are. So I think that will significantly improve, or that is the last major barrier. I think everything else is just improvement, improve on the gameplay, improve on the performance, that sort of thing. Which is why I think once 4.0 comes out, it won't be too long before we see beta, an official beta, because
Oh
at
boy.
that point there's no more foundation.
Oh,
I said the word.
boy.
I said the word beta.
I didn't say it. Everybody see. I didn't
Yeah,
say it.
I did. Lorstradamus. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Star Citizen beta come in 2024, 2025.
Wow,
Just
that's
because.
ambitious.
Yeah. Well, it's just they've always said that beta is not content complete, it's not. It's feature complete, not content complete. So once they have all the features in, they don't need to have 100 service systems in 2 years, but they'll have all of the main baseline systems done: bounty hunting, piracy, reputation, all that stuff will be implemented in some way, shape, or form. So there's no reason not to go, hey, this is beta now.
I don't even think about the possibility of data running being in the game by then, but I really hope so. I hope it would be here in the next couple of years, because I just keep thinking it's a far ways out. That and like farming.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that comes out in 3 years or so. But the point being, like, that a lot of that stuff, like farming, doesn't make sense until you have base building. You don't want to do base building until you have your back end servers working, and
Fair.
so on and so forth. Like that kind of progression. So everything those things need to be get finished before you can even get done. So the question is, when will those get finished? And if Chris's ambitious, often wrong dates bear out fruit, then by the beginning of next year. But it's always important to remember that Chris is wrong a lot. His dates are not good. So 318 seems reasonable, but 4.0, he was even iffy in 4.0 coming out, like the Evocati happening at the end of this year. So,
Yeah.
I would not bank on it 4.0 until at the earliest, like midsummer, like the June or July of next year,
Yeah.
possibly not even until the end of next year.
Yeah.
It really depends on a lot of other factors.
I'm hoping it's mid next year, but I could see it slipping a little bit further too. So development in general you think will indeed speed up with 4.0 coming in, server meshing, maybe not even 4.0, but a couple patches after they know server meshing is working for them and Gen 12's in and Quantum is starting to actually work. You really feel like the content is going to start to fill in Star Citizen more after that.
Yeah, I think once that stuff, the content will start to fill out. Instead of having these major 318, 4.0 patches, we'll see regular patches, but with a lot more stuff added to them because they can try that. And I don't think those things will work. But,
all right, well,
they'll try them.
You heard it here. Lorstradamus has spoken. Not only are we going to beta, but the content waterfall is going to drop, and everybody's going to have the best season of their life.
Beta next week, and then there's going to be a Jesus patch after that. That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
100% confirmed.
Right in line with my 4.0 prediction for next week. We're on a roll with this podcast. This is going to be my most hated episode.
Listen, one of my largest captain's tables was when you came on, and I predicted that, what was it, 312 was going to be the major patch, and then they gutted 312 entirely and moved it to the week later.
All the viewership was after they did that, just people coming to hate watch.
Yeah.
Well, it's always up in the air with Star Citizen, but I don't think anybody who is a legitimate space fan or just like space games can see Starfield and not also be excited for just another big time space game coming out, especially one with so much in common with Star Citizen and some of the other games on the market that can help us see more people expand into the genre. I'm so excited for the genre right now. It's going to be good. I mean, did you watch the game shows last week?
Yeah.
There was one of those shows. I think it was a Summer Games Fest maybe, or the next showcase or something like that. I wish we just had E3. One of them had like 3, maybe 4 sci-fi horror games as well. 2 of them took place in space. I'm sitting here like, where did this all come from? This is before Starfield is successful. So I am
you also
more than
have
pumped.
Deliver Us Mars, which is I think is a sequel to Deliver Us the Moon, which is really like a third person action game. Like it's it's Tomb Raider in space. Is what they're banking on, and it looks good. It looks like an interesting kind of storyline.
That sounds good. So. Yeah, it's a good time to be a space fan.
Best time to be a space fan.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on to this episode of Astro Pub. We always have some fantastic talks, especially when we get to talk about stuff more than just Star Citizen. But we're always dragged back. It's good fun to discuss that game. It's never ending in development and in talking topics. So it was always fun to have a podcast about it. But before you go, most people have already found out from this talk, you are the lore guy, and you cover space games. So considering there are space people in this podcast that like lore, can you tell them where they might be able to find some content? Scratch that itch.
YouTube.com/TheAstroPub. I do a series called Galactic Historian. I just started because people are asking for me to do a playlist for lore for Starfield. I have 3 videos out already for the lore for Starfield, including an overarching discussion on all of the lore for all of the factions and what we know about the universe so far. One talking about Vasco, your companion robot, their lore and background, and one on Constellation, which talking about the history and background of the main faction in the game. I also do content. I've done content for Cyberpunk. I've done content for Starfield and Star Citizen as well. Mostly Star Citizen, obviously. But if you like that lore stuff, check that out. And I also do other stuff. Sometimes Ian will show up on it. The Lore Citizen podcast that we do. We have possibly some major news because Algrid is a beast for that one. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about it because it's still in discussion.
Keep that hush
form, but yeah. So, but keep an eye on for that. So yeah, the Lore Citizen podcast, you'll see Keenan on there where we talk about Star Citizen more in depth in terms of the lore. And you can also catch me live at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub playing space games and Star Citizen and talking about them on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And
hosting the Captain's Table, his own podcast, which I need to get back on there. I love July. That show.
We have a July discussion, which is important because remember we're going to talk about not just Star Citizen but other games.
Yes. It's gosh, I'm looking forward to it. But thanks again for coming on. Like he said, go check him out, YouTube and Twitch, and of course the podcast that he hosts on all the same platforms that this is on. Anchor, Apple, it's distributed the same exact way. So make sure to check that out. It's a lot of good content. There's never, I'm not a lore guy. I will talk about features all day, but there's never a lack of content in Star Citizen, and the AstroPub is a place to go for lore. Thank you so much again for coming on here. And thank you to everybody for watching this, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening to this on any of our audio platforms, which is ad-free and supported by our Patreon, Ko-fi, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. Thank you so much for that support. And if you'd like extra perks, extra exclusive videos behind the scenes, check down the link below and consider joining up as a supporter. Either way, though,
do it. You'll never be disappointed.
Never. Except for maybe Sundays, because I'm not super active. But besides that, never. But thanks again for listening to the podcast. This has been The Launch Sequence. I am your host, Keenan. And one last time, thank you, AstroPub. We'll see you all next week. Well,
thank you for having me on.
I'll see you all next week. AstroPub will see you on his own channel. Anyways.
I'll see you in the verse.
Goodbye, everybody.